I sat in the third row of the crowded auditorium, completely unadorned, while my father snorted in contempt just 3 seats ahead of me. He had no idea I was sitting right behind him, nor did he realize that the elite military gathering he was attending was actually assembled to honor the daughter he had spent 20 years dismissing. My father, Richard, was a decorated tactical colonel who only valued combat scars, heavy firepower, and battlefield iron. To him, my obsessive passion for mastering foreign languages was nothing more than a pathetic, soft-hearted hobby that would never turn me into a real soldier. For 2 decades, he treated my academic achievements like worthless waste paper while constantly belittling my choice to serve behind a desk. Growing up in our house was like living inside a cold, silent fortress, where affection was strictly forbidden. My mother passed away after a long illness when I was young, leaving me entirely at the mercy of Richard's rigid discipline and high expectations. While other kids played sports, I spent my lonely nights locked in my bedroom, listening to international shortwave radio broadcasts and mastering syntax patterns in 5 different alphabets. When I finally earned a full scholarship for military intelligence and linguistics, Richard did not even smile. He simply glanced at the acceptance letter, folded it in half, and tossed it into the trash next to the morning grocery list. That cold gesture broke whatever desire I had left to win his approval, so I left for university and cut off all unnecessary emotional ties with him. After graduation, I was recruited into the Defense Intelligence Agency under an off-the-books classified initiative. My real name, Nora Vance, was scrubbed from all public registries, and I was assigned a lethal, specialized role navigating high-risk conflict zones across the globe. I was not just translating words. I was decoding human behavior, anticipating enemy movements, and saving entire squads without ever firing a single bullet. In the secret debriefing rooms of the intelligence community, they did not call me Nora Vance. They called me Nightshade, an operative whose tactical intuition and mastery of 9 languages made me an invisible lifesaver across multiple international theaters. Yet my father spent all those years telling his military buddies that his daughter was just a glorified secretary typing up meaningless office paperwork. Everything fell apart during a covert mission near the Syrian border when an unexpected communications breach nearly got my team killed. Someone inside the system had leaked restricted clearance codes, and my real name was broadcast over compromised tactical channels. The agency immediately pulled me from active duty and placed me under administrative review, suspecting that I might be the mole who betrayed the unit. Determined to clear my name, I spent 72 continuous hours hacking through dormant intelligence archives. From my isolated terminal, what I uncovered was a devastating betrayal that tore my heart out. The breach had been caused by an illegal encryption backdoor, and the final digital authorization bore the personal clearance signature of Colonel Richard Vance. My own father had signed off on the corrupt contract that nearly ended my life. Instead of publicly accusing him or causing a massive scandal, I quietly routed the forensic evidence directly to internal compliance auditors. I knew the military hierarchy preferred controlled environments over messy public scenes, so they set a brilliant trap for the corrupt contractors. They organized a high-profile honor ceremony at the military base, inviting my father as a distinguished legacy guest while keeping the true purpose hidden. Sitting in that crowded hall, I listened as Richard openly mocked the announcer for mentioning an operative who spoke 9 languages. He turned to the officer next to him and scoffed that 9 languages would never make anyone a true soldier on the battlefield. I kept my face entirely emotionless, letting his arrogant words hang in the air for just a few seconds longer. Suddenly, General Vance stepped up to the main podium, bypassed his prepared notes, and looked out at the audience with absolute authority. He leaned into the microphone and uttered 7 words that paralyzed the entire room. "We require Nightshade at the podium immediately." The whisper of that legendary call sign sent a violent shockwave of tension through every officer in attendance. I calmly stood up from row 3, straightened my plain uniform, and stepped directly into the center aisle. As my footfalls echoed through the silent hall, Richard slowly turned in his seat, expecting to see a hulking combat veteran walk past. When his eyes finally locked onto mine, the color completely drained from his face as the realization struck him like a physical blow. Every high-ranking officer in that building instantly stood at attention, saluting the very operative my father had just spent 20 years belittling. I walked past Richard without making eye contact, stepping up to the stage where the general formally cleared my name and recognized my classified service. For the first time in his rigid, arrogant life, my father was left standing in complete, speechless silence. In the days following the public ceremony, the internal investigation closed in, and Richard was forced to confront the magnitude of his actions. Rather than fighting the charges, he voluntarily surrendered his security clearances and retired in disgrace to avoid dragging my name into the scandal. He realized that the daughter he had discarded as soft was actually the legendary operative who had protected hundreds of soldiers in silence. Months later, I voluntarily transitioned out of field operations to head the strategic listening program at the Intelligence Academy. One afternoon, a small package arrived at my new office containing my father's old academy ring alongside a faded childhood photograph of me reading a book. There was no apology note attached, but for a man who only spoke in orders, it was the only way he knew how to admit he was wrong. I placed the photo on my office desk, not as a reminder of his past neglect, but as proof of my own resilience. I had spent my entire youth trying to earn a place in a world that judged value by loud noise and heavy weapons. In the end, I proved that true strength does not come from shouting orders, but from having the quiet courage to stand firm when the whole world is trying to make you invisible.